Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
And welcome, friends, in episode 177. I am extra excited about this episode for two main reasons. One reason for you and one reason personally for me. Let's start with you. First off, I'm extra excited about this episode because we're going to dive into the topic of e-commerce. This is obviously a very hot topic in web design. And more specifically, we're going to dive into all of the incredible opportunities available to you with e-commerce, whether you want to go the route like I did, which was to offer e-commerce occasionally and just as needed for clients and on more of a simplistic level, or for those of you who really want to go all in on e-commerce and have an e-commerce agency. I probably don't need to explain why there's such a need for online stores and help in the e-commerce realm, but there is. So you can do e-commerce however you'd like to do it in your web design business. And this episode's really going to give you a good lay of the land with how you would like to implement it. And the second reason I'm so excited about this is it's one of my close friends. In fact, my friend here, Daniel Sheard, is the CEO of a UK-based Shopify Plus partner agency that exclusively does e-commerce sites in the UK called Velstar. Now, you might wonder, how did you become such close friends with somebody from the UK? And obviously, we live in a internet technology world where we can talk with anyone over the world. But Dan and I actually met in person, and we talk about this in the episode. But we actually met on my honeymoon. The last day of me and my wife's honeymoon, we were floating in the pool, and I heard this guy talking about WordPress. And so I floated over to him with my little drink, and it was Dan. And we started talking about WordPress, and then we exchanged details, and then we chatted after the honeymoon. And next thing you know, we were collaborating on e-commerce sites together, and we partnered up with some services, and we've been friends ever since. And I've seen Dan take his company of Velstar from nothing to incredible heights, as you'll hear in this agency. And again, he's taken it to this point where they are a Shopify Plus preferred agency, which is awesome. And Dan has a lot of insight on the e-commerce world and what's going on now and how you can implement e-commerce into your web design business and how you can really stand out from other people who are doing e-commerce. So I'm super excited for you. And it was great personally to catch up with Dan as well. He also has a really cool accent. So I think you're going to enjoy it, especially to my US friends who loves a good accent. Anyway, really excited for you. Before we dive in, after this episode, if you're fired up and you're interested in e-commerce, I do have my WordPress WooCommerce course. Now, this is an encapsulation of basically everything I knew and implemented in regards to e-commerce. Again, I'm not an e-commerce expert. It wasn't the main service I had, but in this course, it's more of a beginner style course where I will teach you how to build online stores with WordPress and WooCommerce, and you will be able to offer WooCommerce sites, e-commerce sites after that course. So after this, if you're interested, there will be a link in the show notes for this episode at joshhall.co/177. Head there, and I would love to personally guide you through learning e-commerce. And without further ado, here's my buddy Dan. We're going to talk about all of the incredible opportunities available to you in the world of e-commerce. Let's go. Dan, my man, welcome to the show, dude. I can't even say how pumped I am to reconnect with you and have you on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Josh. Been a while.
It has been a while. We were chatting before we went live. It's been a few years. It was funny. I felt like it was like deja vu when I saw your name pop up on Zoom because you and I did a lot of work together years ago. Yeah. And we had a lot of calls. Of course, you're across the pond, which we'll talk about, but we go way back, man. And I'm really excited to have you on because you have done some awesome stuff with your company. You're the CEO of Velstar, and you guys are doing some incredible things in the e-commerce space. Now, I know you're a Shopify guy, but I'm going to let that slide. Most of all my listeners use WordPress and stuff, but we've got some Shopifyers too. But I figure what we'll do is just talk about e-commerce trends that apply to no matter what platform you use. So I'm super awesome, man. I'm super excited to chat. Before we dive in, do you want to let everybody know first off where you're based out of, and just tell us about Velstar and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, cool, no problem. Thanks for the intro. So as you mentioned, I'm a Shopify guy. we're based in the UK, out of Liverpool. And even though a lot of companies have gone remote, with remote work and working from home, and we do have a few remote employees. We've just signed a new lease on a new building right in the centre of Liverpool because the team's grown really quickly. We'll get into this shortly, I imagine, but e-commerce has been propelled, 5-10 years into the future because of COVID, because people had no choice but to shop online. So for us as an e-commerce agency, we've been ideally positioned. Obviously, nobody wants a global pandemic to happen, but you got to make the best of the situation. And fortunately for us, we were in a good position to help out a lot of businesses, which I guess we'll dive into. But Velstar, we're a Shopify Plus partner. As I say, based in Liverpool, and we have a sole focus on building online stores on Shopify, the platform, and then helping the brands grow through growth marketing, retention marketing, CRO, those sorts of things. It's going really well. So what Shopify Plus partner means is we work with Shopify directly and sort of team up on bigger brands. So we recently launched a new store for French Connection over in the UK, famous brand in the UK. So Shopify speak to French Connection, say, hey, you want to move on to our platform? You should speak to Dan and the guys at Velstar, and then we partner up with Shopify and help.
Gotcha. So they're helping with lead generation and acquisition as well.
Yeah. So there's a number of Shopify Plus partners around the globe. There's probably 20 to 30 in the UK that are similar to us. So not a huge number, like not compared to, say, generalist web design agencies, where that's probably in the thousands in the UK. So we are a preferred partner with Shopify, and we sometimes bring brands to them and say, hey, we got a brand, we'd like your support to bring it onto the platform. And then we team up with the Shopify sales team and work together on the project, and vice versa.
That's awesome. Well, you already hit on an interesting point, which is that e-commerce, like you said, has been propelled basically, 5 to 10 years from the future till now, with just the demand that everyone is online because of COVID. And we were chatting before we went live. I teach full-time now web design, and that was mainly triggered by the start of the pandemic. I had such a wave of folks wanting to learn web design that I just got flooded, and it was awesome. I mean, luckily with online courses, I was able to serve a lot of people at scale, but it really, really set that in motion for me to be able to take the most out of this opportunity and go for it. And it's awesome to hear that it's worked out for you guys too, that opportunity was there. But I know we didn't plan it like this, but by golly, if the opportunity is there, you got to do what you do to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And some positives do come out of it. So we hired people who'd lost jobs in different verticals, different industries because of the pandemic. So Charlie, our head of marketing, she does all the Velstar marketing internally. She lost her job at another agency because they lost a few clients. They got a little bit nervous with the pandemic. So she was new in her previous job. So she lost a job. So we were able to give her a job because of the busyness of our agency. So it's obviously not what we wanted, but we've managed to grow the team and help a few people out who lost jobs through the different industries were hit in different ways. And we're just fortunate. Basically.
Yeah. And now it was interesting because when we first met, you've always been super entrepreneurial, man. In fact, look, I have to ask you this because we met on my honeymoon.
We did.
We met in a pool in Mexico. I remember, so it was so funny. I'm just going to take us completely off course right in the beginning here. My wife was like, babe, don't bring your business cards. Let's just, enjoy our weekend. I was like, all right, no business cards, no shop talk or anything. And then last day of vacation or our honeymoon, we're in the pool and I hear you talking about WordPress. And I'm like, that dude's talking about WordPress. I got to chat with him. It was also the last day of our honeymoon and I was trashed before I think 11 a.m. I was like, I'm going to enjoy this last day. So I don't even know what your thought was when I came up to you in the pool, a beyond tipsy Josh coming up to you, talking about WordPress. But yeah, it was really cool that we ended up meeting in that, weird way. And then you never know how connections and partnerships are going to form when you hear somebody talking about WordPress. So before we kick this off, what were your first thoughts when you met me in the pool in Mexico? I've never started a podcast like that before.
Well, yeah. I always tell that story actually, because we actually came out to visit you guys as well, didn't we, in Columbus, which was a great trip. But yeah, so I don't know, like, I think when you're in this sort of mindset, you're always kind of switched on. And I guess maybe I was, and that was a stunning hotel, by the way. I need to go back to that hotel, just floating around by the swim up bar. And it's kind of like, when you get chatting about yourself and floating around the pool, it was quite a social place, I thought. And someone must have been asking me, "Oh, what do you do?" And back then, I didn't actually own a business. I was in the process, maybe starting up. I was a contractor developer, so I was working on a bit of WordPress stuff, but mainly front end engineering on some big projects. But yeah, I just thought when we got chatting, it's always great to make a connection. And then here we are. That was like, how many years? 6, 7
Well, that
years?
was 15. That was 2015. Yeah. So almost 7 years ago.
7 years this year. So yeah, it was a great connection. And yeah, it's funny how things worked out. We've done some work together in the past, obviously. And yeah, it was a good connection.
We did. And look, the reason I wanted to bring that up is it's true. You just never know who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet them, and how connections can form in the web design world. And yeah, I remember, I specifically remember you just chatting with a dude with your, pina colada in your hand or whatever it was about WordPress. And I floated up, my drunk ass floated up to you. It was like, "You do WordPress? I do too." And then we actually really hit it off. And you guys came and visited us in the States here. And we've done a lot of work together. And I say that to say too, when you're entrepreneurial minded, I think the avenues of whatever you want to do are endless. Like you at that point, you knew WordPress really well. You were, doing coding and stuff like that. And you actually helped me in those early days with some of my sites. And we partnered up on some stuff with some advanced coding. And we partnered up on a Shopify site. I didn't love Shopify just because I was so used to Divi and WordPress, but you did, that was your thing. So you kind of ran with that, which is really cool to see. So now that we're reconnecting several years later, it's awesome to see, what you've done, and you've really honed in on the e-commerce side and stuff like that. So I'd love to know from you, Dan, like before COVID hit, what was the e-commerce landscape like? Like, was it, I imagine it was still steadily growing. And then you said COVID, that really it kind of forced brands to go online at that point, even if they were just dabbling in it, right?
Yeah. Well, so I actually think Shopify kind of played a part in a bit of a revolution themselves in the e-commerce world. So and WooCommerce as well. WooCommerce. Yeah, because
that's what I use.
Yeah, it makes it easy to sell online. But before WooCommerce, before Shopify, it was really tricky to build an online store. It was quite a custom thing, and you needed a lot of budget to get going. So when these sort of tools came out, I'd say, they've been around for quite a while now, even pre-2010, but they just started gathering pace, and the technology's got better and better. And when I started Velstar, it was 2016, beginning of 2016, and e-commerce was really, really picking up. The big player back then was Magento.
That's right.
Yeah. Shopify was coming along and really ruffling a few feathers in the Magento world, because it was kind of like do it yourself, scalable, but it still had a few sort of kinks that needed to work out. And it was very, although it'd been around for 6 or 7 years, it was very sort of raw product. But they just continued to innovate, continued to push. And we became Shopify Expert and then Shopify Plus Partner. And e-commerce was gathering a lot of pace anyway, has been for a while now. A lot of direct-to-consumer brands sprouting up, people who, they can't afford brick and mortar stores. They can't afford to go and spend 100K on a web build, but they could spin up a Shopify store and hustle, drive ads, do some really good marketing. So e-commerce was really in a good spot pre-pandemic. And then COVID hit March 2020, obviously, a little bit before, but it really hit in March 2020. Yeah. And at that point, panic did set in for me, because we had quite a lot of marketing clients. We had quite a lot of big projects on mid project. And initially I thought, everyone's just going to pause. Everyone's just going to hold their budget, hold their nerve. You got a new website coming, just pause that project. Let's keep the old one up. Let's keep the money in the bank. And a couple of people did at the start, but then it's quickly started turning where people realized just how big the opportunity was going to be in e-commerce. And then we started getting some like tons and tons of inquiry. And we were growing pretty quickly anyway. We've probably doubled revenue nearly every year that we've been in operation, but nothing like what happened when COVID hit. It was insane. And we're talking big brands as well, really pushing their website because the retail locations were closed, pumping more money into marketing. And it's, as I said earlier, it's just kind of really pushed e-commerce forward 5, maybe even 10 years to where it's going to be.
And it's interesting, even now, just a couple years past the beginning of all that, we just a few days ago, we saw, so there's a coffee shop my wife and I often go to, and across from that is like a boutique women's clothing store that's been there for years. Well, they had to actually shut down the storefront, and they have a sign on there that says it's 100% online now. So even at this point, there are brands that have tried to keep a retail, like actual foot traffic presence. A lot of those, if they're not making it or they're not profitable enough, they're either going to their website or they're taking their current website and just boosting it and going full time. So it is interesting. I think this is important because the opportunity for web designers, for my audience, to build online stores is key. And again, I'm a promoter of WordPress and WooCommerce. Some of my folks use Shopify, but the tactics and the strategies are regardless of what platform you use.
Absolutely.
And I was kind of curious. So like you guys, is Velstar working with primarily bigger brands now, or do you work with small, mom and pop type of businesses? And do you have any lower tier type of packages for them, or what's that look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's a mixture. So we do have some big brands we work with. So people like Avon, French Connection, Castor, these are like brands, like I'd say $100 million plus brands, swimming in those pools, but the principles are still the same. And then we work with some startups as well who, we have different packages to take them from, take them up to $1 million turnover, that sort of thing, and then move them on to Shopify Plus and just keep helping them scale. So we can work with smaller brands. They tend to be larger now in nature, because I think our specialism as an agency is kind of like end-to-end e-commerce. So we're not just designing and building a website, we're supporting with marketing, so driving traffic and that side of things, and then all the way right through to integrations with warehouse management systems and ERPs and that sort of thing. So getting the sales is one side of it, but operations and supply chain and getting the products out the door is another side. But
I was just going to say there's the customer aspect of all that too. Like when somebody buys a product, where does their email address go? Is it in a CRM, or are you guys handling some of the customer management side of things as well?
Yeah. So we help set up those processes, and we partner with the right sort of technology partners in that sense. So there's a really good product called Gorgias. It's like GORGIAS, which is an incredible customer service platform. So they held a big direct-to-consumer event last year that I spoke at and things like that. We partner with...
Is that a replacement for like MailChimp or something?
No, not from an email marketing point of view. That's from a customer service point of view. So it amalgamates all your channels. So it'll pull in email, it'll pull in social media, absolutely everything into one dashboard and allow you to automate all your customer service. But that's where these things are moving now with e-commerce. Customer experience is what's going to win. And for web designers, so how would that benefit your audience is the boundaries are going to continue to be pushed online, in my opinion. So the high street is going to change. Shopping malls are going to change. They're going to become, in my opinion, more experiences. So you won't go into a store and see every item you could buy being stocked. That isn't how it's going to work. You're going to go into a store and like have experiences, try things out, be sort of, for kind of premium brands and luxury brands and that side of things, which means online, you've really got to push the boundaries. So how do you keep returns down? Like you push returns technology, like size guides, fitting things. So how's that going to be pushed from a web design point of view? There's a lot of plugins, but they need customizing and managing. And then things like homeware and furniture, I want to see them in my living room. So AR and VR technology is going to be huge. So
I was going to mention that too. So we're building our new home right now and looked for a couch for the main room. And of course we started online, and then we actually went into the store to actually sit on it and see how it felt and everything. And then the gal who we ended up purchasing that from, we're actually just waiting back to get they're going to mock it up in a picture of our room and then give us some ideas. So like you said, it's much more experience-based. It's kind of a hybrid between, this isn't going to be the same for all businesses, but any business like that is going to have a retail front. I do feel like there's this hybrid approach that has to be, working well together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what I mean in saying you're never going to give an offline experience online. There's nothing like feeling a product, touching a product, obviously, but trying to merge the two as much as possible. And those technologies are being really pushed right now. And then you've got crazy Facebook metaverse and things like that are coming along. And the world is shifting, and COVID has lit a fire under that and sped a lot of these things up. And we're going to see that across the board, I think. But it's a great opportunity for web designers, learning the right skills, focusing, I think, niching down, not being a kind of something for everybody. I think what we did really well at Velstar, and it does get scary at the start, but we said we build e-commerce stores and we build them on Shopify. That's it. And we would get people who come to us and say, oh, I want to build a store on Magento. We don't want to do that. I want to build a store on even WordPress to a certain degree. We did cheat a little bit and take the odd project. But the second we sort of niche down, focused in, this is what we do, it makes it so much easier. You're setting up your processes, you're getting the team in that can really focus. We become ecosystem experts. It's easy to onboard new employees because this is how we work. These are the tools. This is what we do. So really honing and focusing on that has helped us massively. And I couldn't recommend that enough, whether that's Divi and that's your bag, or whether that's like you're a specific e-commerce, WooCommerce developer, whatever it is, I think really being the master of that specific. And you could even go deeper. So what we've started doing at Velstar now is saying we only work in certain verticals. So we'll only work in sports, fitness, lifestyle, which does cover quite a few, I would say. Like fashion.
But you're niching down from the industry as far as generalist industry. So you niche down to Shopify, e-commerce, online stores, and then you take it further to certain niches so you're not just doing websites for a certain type of industry right now, but you're getting, you're probably weeding out some of the ones that maybe you've experienced aren't a good fit, or maybe you just not the perfect type of client for you or something.
Absolutely. That's it. And it just allows you to think, it can be scary. Someone comes along and says, I've got a big budget and I want to build, I don't know, a WordPress store with no e-commerce, but I've got £100,000 to spend or $100,000 to spend. And you have to say, no, that's a lot of money to turn down. But in the long run, it's going to benefit the business, I think.
And I do have some students who are solely doing e-commerce, which is pretty cool. As you know, Dan, I balanced the two. I started doing WooCommerce sites along with my regular website designs. And I think that's a great way to start. If you do, I agree. If you feel the urge to just go e-commerce, there is a massive opportunity for that. And it's needed because I don't know anyone who does e-commerce well that is looking for work. Like there's so much demand for a good web designer or small team, agency, whatever you want to call it, to do online stores and do them well, and to help out with all these other aspects of running an online store, which I figure we'll talk about here. But I say that to say, if you do want to incorporate e-commerce, that's a great way to get started, because that's what I did. And what was interesting is I found out that if I did a really good job on a website for a client, an e-commerce function might come a year or two later. Like I had one client that was a business consulting firm here in Columbus. I designed their website. It was awesome. And then I think 6 months later, they were like, we have this ticketing system that's just a nightmare. We'd like to bring this into our website. And then we were able to use WooCommerce for that, for their ticketing and for their online sales. So it was awesome. Like that's a great way to go. What are some of your tips for somebody who is maybe, before we talk about some of the specifics of all these aspects with e-commerce, for somebody who's interested in online stores, what are maybe the first few things they should consider thinking about? It doesn't have to be, tool specific, but I think a lot of people see commercials now where it's like, Squarespace, start your online store, start selling $1 a day. No big deal. It's not a hassle. As you know, and as I know, there's a lot more that goes into a successful online store. So where would somebody start if they're thinking about e-commerce?
So do you mean from the sort of web designer's point of view or from starting an online store point of view?
Helping a client with their online store. If they want to add this to their service and just kind of, dip their toe in it, what are some of the initial principles you would recommend?
Well, the first thing to be aware of, and you do find this out the hard way, is an online store, an e-commerce store, it's always on. So what I mean by that is if you built websites for an accountancy, a lawyer, where I'm going, a building contractor, if that site goes down for a couple of hours, the site's down for a couple of hours. Sure, they're not going to be happy. You might have a client who's saying, why is my site down? This isn't great. Get it up ASAP. If you have an e-commerce store that goes down and that's their only source of revenue, the pressure is really, really on. So it's worth bearing in mind that e-commerce clients are probably the most demanding, and for good reason, really. It's their storefront. It's their sole means of revenue. They've got a team themselves, probably warehouse. They've got bills they need to pay. So if that store's down for a couple of hours, that could be, depending on the size of the store, that could be hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds. So they are demanding clients. I'd bear that in mind. But a good place and you've got to think about the whole end-to-end solution as well, in my opinion. Again, when you're talking about general web design, you build it, people can move it around and play with it, maybe fill a form in, read a blog post. But with an e-commerce store, you've got to think about the whole journey. They're landing on a homepage or a collection page or a product page. They're adding to cart. So you've got to really understand the whole sort of flow. So my first port of call would be, and obviously most people have bought something online now, so understand an e-commerce store. But I would set one up and play around. But okay, I've added all the products to the store. Is all the data incorrectly? Are the pages laid out? Like, go through the whole process. What happens? Can I take payments? Just check absolutely everything. Do a lot of end-to-end testing before you even sort of delve in to the ecosystem. And then platform is obviously an important one. Most of your audience are obviously Divi or WordPress people, so it'd be WooCommerce. Again, it's just about making sure that you understand the whole flow and user journey of e-commerce, because it is just, it's very obviously transactional. It's the only thing that matters is the conversion. It's very different from a static website.
Those are great points, man. A couple solid points there. I think you do have to be aware that these commercials and ads that we see about start your online store for $1 a day with Wix or Squarespace, it is not that simple. But it's not. And at the same time, a needy client also means that you can charge more. And to put a positive spin on that aspect, it means that you have a client for as long as they're your client. So that's one cool thing about e-commerce, right? Is when you land an e-commerce client, you don't need that many of them to potentially make a six-figure income, because they might be paying you $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a month, depending on what you're doing for them, or way more, depending on how invested you are.
That's a great point. An e-commerce store is never finished because they're constantly going to need updates. So you see those Squarespace ads like, start store, but then you got to think about, okay, shipping plugins, payment gateways, taxes,
Where's the customer information going? Are you using email marketing?
Inventory management, CRM. There's so many things that you need to think about. But yeah, you are absolutely right. They are lucrative clients because you launch the store and then the next day, the next week, there's new products to add, new collections, new banners. There's so many things that need doing on an ongoing basis to an e-commerce store. The stores that stand still are the ones that don't generate the revenue that they need to generate. And you go on any of these big stores, it's constant innovation, changing, updating products, sort of making sure you're getting using the best tools. And I know there's a lot of plugins for WooCommerce to do that. So yeah, they are lucrative clients because they need constant support.
And the cool thing is it's fairly easily measured. I know a lot of my students, we've been talking about conversions and offering conversion-based design, but then the question is, how do I actually measure that for my clients? With an online store, revenue is the number one metric. It's like, did we make enough this month, or did we make more than last month? And those little tweaks can make a big difference. Something you mentioned a little bit ago was like the entire checkout experience. I was notorious when I got started with e-commerce for making the front end of the site look really nice, some good conversion-based stuff initially, and then I would just throw the checkout page on there and be done with it. And I really wouldn't give enough emphasis to the whole checkout experience. And then post checkout, like what do you put on your checkout page once somebody purchases, then the follow-up steps. So I'd love to talk about some of that kind of stuff that you've seen work. But I think that's what you mean by encapsulating the whole journey, right? Like the customer journey through all that. And I would say too, for anyone who's like, good God, that sounds like so much work, I don't know if I want to do this. The cool thing is if you do it once, you can replicate that system. Have you guys done that? Like, do you almost have like a templatized approach with the entire customer journey for all your sites?
Every store that we design and build has a custom UX generally. 9 out of 10 is custom. 1 is maybe a pre-built template that we adapt. But with tools like WooCommerce and Shopify, you can kind of so Shopify is a checkout flow that doesn't change. You can change the branding and the layout a little bit, and you can add like steps and things like that when you're on Shopify Plus. But the checkout is kind of, it is what it is. And I think WooCommerce is the same, and you can reuse kind of pre-built checkouts, which I'd highly recommend, because that is the point that the people are putting the credit card details in is the most critical. So that just needs to be seamless. So don't try and reinvent the wheel with that UX, because Shopify is the prime example. This is $100 billion plus company. Can you imagine the money they have spent optimizing that checkout process?
That's a good point.
And we get this quite regularly. A client said it last week. They're like, "Oh, we'd like to move a few things around in the checkout process." And I was like, guys, no offense, you sell t-shirts or whatever it is. I can't even remember. You sell clothes. That's your thing. You design clothes, you sell clothes. You're recommending to change Shopify, the multi-billion-dollar SaaS company's checkout experience that powers probably 1.5 million stores globally. I mean, you are not qualified to make those recommendations.
That's a good point.
Let's stick. And also the benefit is with these things that are used so much, people get used to them, like Amazon. Yeah. People are used to the Amazon checkout. People are now used to the Shopify checkout because so many stores are using it. And the same will be with WooCommerce stores that are using similar sort of flows. So I wouldn't try and reinvent the wheel on that sort of thing. But you're totally right. The post-purchase experience is really important as well. Getting the right emails when people when people buy something, they want to know where their order's up to, how long it's going to be. They want to track it and things like that. So all these things you've got to pull together. However, if you put the work in and the effort in and go and learn about it, there's a lot of tools that can help with each part of the process. I mentioned one before when I mentioned Gorgeous, that's customer service. There's MailChimp, there's Klaviyo for email marketing as well. There's things like ShipStation for shipping and shipping providers. Things like Brightpearl for warehouse management systems. So there are tons of tools out there. It's just about putting the effort in to learn the different sort of elements to it.
And that's a great challenge because I'm actually just about to start revamping and tweaking my checkout experience on my website at joshhall.co, because right now it's fairly canned. It's not great. But Divi just recently added some WooCommerce modules where you can tweak the customizing or tweak the checkout and customize it a little bit, but still in the confines of the layout of WooCommerce. Because it's a great point, Dan. You don't want to customize something that is a proven system that's going to work. That's kind of one reason I haven't really done too much on the checkout end of my site. However, it's fairly lackluster as of talking with you right now. So beginning of 2022 here, it's one of my first big goals is to really improve that to help the conversions. That way, when people have something in their cart, they're moving forward. Because you just said it. That's a hot key point that you just hit, which was wherever they're putting their credit card info, that is the most important page in regards to a sale. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Whatever you can do to boost that.
You don't want any friction. You don't want any blockers. Let them put the card in, make it really easy for them. No, don't give them pop-ups. Don't give them anything. Just make it really clean, strip everything out. You got the forms, make it secure, obviously, reassure people, strip all that back, make it nice and clean. And the best thing to do is go on the biggest stores in the world and check it out. So a good one for Shopify, if you wanted to look at a good Shopify checkout, is probably Gymshark, huge, obviously, sportswear brand. Go and look at their checkout flow. Those guys on Black Friday process insane numbers. If they didn't have a completely optimized checkout and spend a lot of money on making it that way, then you know that you're sort of piggybacking off the best practices there.
That's a good point.
And you can do the same for stores on other platforms as well. Go and look at Amazon's checkout. Mm-hmm. Look at what people do. They strip the checkout back and steal from the greatest e-commerce companies. I mean, it's just proven practices.
That's a good point. So let's just tactically on the checkout window here. Great point. Strip things away, make it simple. Now, I've seen a lot of people really encourage having reviews or any sort of elements that really kind of help increase engagement to make sure they do convert. In fact, when I signed up with my business coach, I'll never forget on his checkout form with the credit card, there was a video of him that said, just a reminder, when you sign up for this, I coach you directly. And it was a big boost for me to do that. So are there any elements you might recommend adding as long as it looks okay and it's not jumbled or anything like that you might recommend on a checkout window? Or do you like just a plain sign up credit card? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, straight credit card, step, and make it really clear what about the process and the step they're up to. So your address, show them the address form. Next, your billing details, your order summary, just really clear, really focused. And you know what? We mentioned this earlier about e-commerce clients being lucrative customers. The beauty of it is just because you finish it doesn't mean it needs to be finished. So just test. So if you think, you know what, and it's a good point, the video that you just mentioned might really help conversion. Try it out. There's tools out there where you could drive 50% of the traffic at a checkout without the video and 50% of the traffic at a checkout with the video. See which one converts the best, roll with it.
And it may depend on the product too. This was a high level coaching type of program.
Yeah,
if I'm buying a t-shirt, I don't need the owner to say this t-shirt's going to look great on you, Dan. So it definitely might depend on where you might want to spice up a conversion checkout. But that's a great point, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those type of products where it's a coaching sort of thing, it's a very personal thing. You're buying into that guy. Essentially, you're buying time with him. And it's all about him. So that is a great, you're just getting one last reassurance message just before you hit pay. I think that is definitely a totally different journey from I'm on Instagram, I'm scrolling through stories, and then I've seen someone post a shirt and I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy that. And then at that point, I want to get to the quickest checkout possible. I want to go Instagram, product page, checkout. Hopefully, and you can do this on Shop Pay, and there's loads of tools for this, Apple Pay or Shop Pay, You don't even need to put your card details in, just check out and straight through.
Yeah, let's talk about that since we're there, because there's all this talk about different currencies, cryptocurrencies, and whether those are going to integrate with sites. I still just use PayPal and Stripe. Which luckily Stripe, I mean, gosh, they killed it or what? Like, what are your thoughts on PayPal? Do you still integrate that, or do you just do Stripe, or, what are other payment platforms have you guys trusted integrating?
I would include, I'd include a few and give people options, because these days, the way the world's gone, people have different accounts with different things. So, like there's Apple Pay, Google Pay, Amazon Pay, include them. I don't see the downside in that, because it's literally a button.
I know I had debated on just using Stripe for my site, but I'm so glad I stuck with PayPal, particularly in the web design world. It's a good, I would say, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'd say it's a good like 40% of orders that come through PayPal. Me. Yeah. It's nearly half.
Every store we build has PayPal on it. It's like the OG of payment gateways, and you've got to include PayPal. It helps conversion. It does help conversion. A lot of people just like paying with PayPal rather than. I do for some stuff, because sometimes I'm like, I don't have my card, I'll just use my PayPal if I don't have it saved. Or sometimes it's nice to have those different options. Particularly, a lot of people are using PayPal to separate business expenses from subscription software. So that's a great point. And then there's the new kids on the block. They've been around a few years, but they're still the new kids, which is buy now, pay later. So you guys heard of Klarna over there, which is buy now, pay later, or split in 3. So
I have heard, now is that connected with PayPal at any point, or because I know PayPal has a function that has PayPal similar.
Has a version, but in the UK, in Europe, one of the biggest startups in Europe is Klarna, which is a buy now, pay later platform, or split in 3 is another option. So you're buying a shirt for $90, then it's 30, and it's just seamless experience. So a lot of people have accounts with multiple ones. So another one's called Lay-By, another one's called Afterpay. So people might have different accounts. So we tend to include the buttons for those, and they click the button, the window pops up, and they can check out instantly, and away they go. So
that's a good point too. These softwares that will automate the payment plan basically option, because I did payment plans on my site for a little while, but it ended up being quite just cumbersome and really tricky, and I had some issues with it. I ended up just sticking with one-time payments. However, I know PayPal does have that option now to where I get the full payment, but then the customer has the option to pay in thirds or whatever it is. Yeah. Which for me, I've got my business course is $500. My bundle, which is all my courses, it's $1,500. So it would be nice to have that option for some folks who need some help. Yeah.
That definitely work for you. It depends on the brand and the product. So for you, I think splitting it I'd say it's a must. Like if you can split it with PayPal or one of the other platforms, I would absolutely do that if I was you. Because it just spreads the cost. You get paid straight away, spreads the cost for the user.
I'm taking notes, because now this has turned into a coaching session, consulting for me, which is awesome. But I know it's helping everybody else too. So refining my checkout page, the split payment options in PayPal or some other platform, that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. It'll help conversions. It makes it easier for, maybe it makes it easier for the person who wants to do the course as well to swallow. They think, spread this over 3 months or 3 payments, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Doesn't work for every brand. If I'm Louis Vuitton and I put Klarna on my site, it's a little bit silly. If you're spending $2,000 on a handbag, it's a luxury.
You can pay the $2,000, right?
Yeah, exactly. That I think there's certain brands that it wouldn't be right for, but for you in a consulting and a coaching kind of way, I think it'd be ideal.
Yeah, that's good. Challenge accepted. That's great, man. What about cart abandonments? And you had mentioned MailChimp a little bit ago. I'm still using MailChimp. The reason I have stuck with it and the reason I like it is they've really added a lot from the e-commerce component to where I have it all connected with my revenue. I can see email campaigns connected with my e-commerce, which is really cool. And I'm about to, again, as I'm kind of working on all this for my site, I'm looking into more cart abandonment sequences and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on that? Do you recommend all shops have some sort of, I saw this was in your cart. If you have any questions, let us know. What are your thoughts on that?
Every single store on the planet needs this.
Okay.
So there is only 2 channels that you're going to own as an e-commerce business owner: your website and your email data. They're the only 2 you're going to own. Everything else you rent. So you're renting Google ads, you're paying Google for every click you get. Same with Facebook, same with TikTok, all these different channels, all these different marketing channels. You may be great at SEO, but it's good. You're ranking on Google. You're not ranking on your own store. You own your email list. That's your list, and you own your e-commerce store. So email marketing for somebody who's selling online is the number one one of the number one fundamentals that you've got to set up on day one. The day you launch, that needs to be set up, and all different sort of flows as well. So cart abandonment is a huge one. So maybe offering maybe not for you as a consultant or a coach with courses, maybe not a discount, but maybe a small discount for, it depends on the brand.
Sure. I would be comfortable with that. Like, hey, I saw you were interested in this. Here's a 10% off discount that you can use for, one or multiple courses if you'd like. I would be comfortable with doing that, or a credit or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for you, cart abandonment, absolutely. You can also do browser abandonment. So we use a platform called Klaviyo to do our email marketing. And so we offer email marketing as a service. So we set these flows up for our clients and we design the emails and that sort of thing. So browser abandonment would be if the store knows me when I log on, so they know it's me because they have my email and they've dropped a pixel and that sort of thing. You can see what products I've viewed, and then maybe later that day or the next day, I can send an email and say, hey, I saw you looking at my Divi course. It's ready, come and check out, that sort of thing. And then there's like weekly newsletters that you can send out and tie them straight back into your store. There's tons and tons of different flows.
The browser abandonment, is that different than like when you click out of a browser, there's like a pop-up that's like, hey, heads up before you leave. Is that what you're referencing, or is that something a little bit different?
Something a little bit different, but that's a great way to push people back with exit intent, essentially, isn't it? So there's tools like Privy that help with that. So when you go to move to the exit, brings a pop-up, don't leave, or enter your email address for 10% off and that sort of thing. So it's similar, but slightly different. So
gotcha.
It's just, you need the customer to have an account basically when they're on your store, but then when they are, you can see what they're browsing.
Yeah, that's great, man. And this is interesting because there are these little components that make such a big difference for an online store, which is why whenever I remember I had a client one time who I had previously done artwork for in the band world. I designed their CD artwork for super cheap, of course. As you know, Dan, I came from the band world and stuff. And then years later, they circled back around, wanted an online store. And I only bid out like $2,000 for this. This was years ago, which I was one of my first online stores I was going to do. And he basically came back and said that it was preposterous and was ridiculous that I would charge $2,000 when you can set up an online store yourself. And I was like, well, fine, go freaking do it yourself and see how it goes. It's all these other aspects. Yeah, it's all these other aspects that are inside of this that are really apart from the actual online store itself. The entire flow, the whole UX experience, like you talked about. And then the other thing is, I think a lot of e-commerce clients are not prepared for is after the fact kind of stuff. So maybe we can touch on that. Again, we've talked about CRM, customer data management. Where does their information go? How do you keep up with them on email? But then also support. I think a lot of e-commerce clients don't think about support, or they don't have their terms and conditions or refund policy or any of that in place. I imagine it's probably common sense. If you're a web designer, you're going to offer this. You need to help guide your clients through that stuff too, right? Because I'm sure clients, they're just thinking about selling their product. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I need a support channel. And then we need email. And then we need, what's our refund policy? Like, do you help folks figure that stuff out as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the size of the client as well. So for your listeners, watchers, the smaller brands are going to need a lot more support. So things that you just mentioned, they're going to need support with that. So there are tools out there that help with this. So a little recommendation of mine would be partner with those tools. They can introduce you to customers. So we partner with I like to think the leaders in the sector within e-commerce. So for us, Shopify is the e-commerce platform. We partner with them. Klaviyo, email marketing platform. We partner with them. ShipStation for like shipping rules and helping customers get the best shipping provider. We partner with them. Trustpilot for reviews. We partner with them. Yotpo for reviews, but also user-generated content. Gorgeous for customer service. So what you're doing then is you're really investing time in learning the tool, but then you're partnering with the tool and the brand. You'll also earn some commission on the back end. So you get a revenue share, quite rightly so, because you're bringing the customer to the partner.
Sure.
But then you're building up your sort of Swiss Army knife of how you develop an e-commerce store. So when you're on these calls or when you're in these meetings and saying, okay, so you're going to help me with my website, but what happens when I ship an order and I need it to go to my warehouse? And then you go, oh, I'm a Limworks partner. I can set up a call, meet you in Limworks. I'll act as like your kind of consultant guy. Okay, what about when I want to send an abandoned cart email? Well, I'm a MailChimp or I'm a Klaviyo partner. I can set. So it's about having the whole, I mean, you could just go, hey, I design the stores, I hand it over, and it's good luck. But in my opinion, the way to get those sticky clients is really act as a partner with these vendors, because they're going to need a lot of vendors. So returns, even like there's portals for returns. There's a returns.
And what a value add for clients who are overwhelmed already. So if you can say, listen, we handle this and this and this for you. This is why we're premium. This is why it's $500, $1,000 a month or whatever. Again, you don't need that many clients to bring your business to a six-figure level for a lot of my audience. If you just handle some of these things that even right now you might think are terrifying, but would you say that once you get familiar with some of this stuff, it becomes second nature? And then again, when something works for one client, you just replicate that for the other one and tweak it accordingly.
It's true. Yeah. Like we're scratching the surface in a way because we're talking from a web designer's point of view, rather than if I was talking to an e-commerce business owner or a D2C business owners, it'd be a different conversation. But you are reusing the same tools over and over again. And in the WooCommerce space, I guess you'd have your sort of base theme or base template that you're going to spin up. You're going to have these things, develop standard operating procedures, develop these flows, and you'd be following your own flow. You'd be saying, okay, this is the steps I follow. Okay, have we got the terms and conditions in place? Yeah. Have we got the returns policy? Yeah. Have we got the privacy policy? Yeah. Is the checkout set up? And we have all these checklists at Bellstar and stuff. Really basic stuff, but you want to tick every box as you're going through.
Yeah. And it's easy to forget about all those. If you're building a site and you don't have some sort of SOP that's just even a standard checklist of all the little parts.
Yeah. And once you break it down, then it becomes less overwhelming, and it's more we're checking every box. Can I land on this store fresh in private browsing so it doesn't cache, it doesn't remember me, and go right the way through, place an order. The order goes through to the warehouse or whoever it needs to go to. The money ends up in the bank account, and then eventually the product gets shipped. And you just start rinsing and repeating. And obviously there's still new tools now that we learn about, and we're 6 years in.
And, I was just thinking, for anyone who is just utterly overwhelmed by doing all these aspects, you can always add things in phases for clients too, particularly if maybe if they have a tighter budget. They could always have the basics that you absolutely need to have. But then if in 2 months, if you want to add the cart abandonment sequence and then add maybe some tweaks to the checkout page and some more email marketing after that, you can always add those things on eventually, which I think for the web designers is really empowering, because we don't have to necessarily do everything in one shot. It can build, like you said, an e-commerce site, just like all websites, are never done. So it's always going to evolve.
It's true. And we do work with clients, even big brands work in that way as well. They say, okay, we want to get the migration done. We want to get on the new platform. We want to have the basic setup, email, like we want everything set up. But then maybe we wanted a quiz that asked our customers questions and then gave them the perfect product for them. That's a phase 2, that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of brands work that way. Another thing to do as well, if it's a little bit overwhelming, if you're the designer or like the web designer and you're comfortable in creating the store, but then maybe you're thinking, what about email? You could partner with someone who knows that stuff.
Right.
Like you could, and we work with, so even now we'll have a designer approach us, for example, and they'd say, hey, we've done the UX and we've done the design for a brand, but we're not developers. Can you partner with us to take our designs and turn them into an online store? And that's one way that you could sort of alleviate those fears. Or you could say to an email marketing agency, and there's specific email marketing people out there, say, I'm building a store for a client. They're going to want a really good email marketing package. They're going to need a lot of email support. Can we partner on this brand? So you can reach out to the community, and the WordPress community is a good one. There'll be a lot of places, and people can support you in the early days. And that's
speaking of partnerships, one thing I meant to ask a little bit ago was when you talked about partnering with like MailChimp or Shopify Plus or all these, legit companies, how do you go about that? Do they just have applications on their websites? Do you have to be at a certain level to qualify for that? Or what does that process look like?
Yeah. So it depends on the company, really. So Shopify is a tricky one. You've got to prove that you can. So to be a Shopify Plus partner, you've got to prove that you can build Shopify Plus stores at an enterprise level, have a portfolio, prove that you can bring new business to Shopify. You've got to have certain staff members in place. I'm just trying to rack my brain, thinking back to when we joined.
I was just kind of curious what that looks like.
Yeah, you've got to have someone who manages projects. You've got to have someone who manages clients, someone who manages you've got to have these people in place. So you've got to be at a certain scale, depending on the partnership. But then there's other ones like, I'm not sure on MailChimp specifically because we use Klaviyo, but Klaviyo is a good example. You can start on the bottom rung at Klaviyo and you can say, hey, I've got a client. I want to bring them onto Klaviyo. You can learn how Klaviyo works. They've got a lot of really great online tutorials, and I don't think it's that difficult to learn the coding element of Klaviyo. The real skill in email marketing is the strategy and the design and the copywriting rather than the coding. And then you can start from the bottom and work your way up. And then, so think we're something like a platinum partner with Klaviyo, but you can start right at the bottom and just work your way up. Bring on more brands and say, hey, I'm a Klaviyo expert, and win new business that way. So it depends on the platform really, but most of them will have. So with Shopify, you'd start out life as a Shopify partner. So you'd bring Shopify a few clients, they'd pay you some commission. You'd get access to sort of like tutorials and that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Yeah, this is great, Dan. Man, we've really covered a lot as far as particularly just the conversion-based aspects of online stores and the cart checkout experience, abandonment sequences, all the other aspects that are entailed with an e-commerce site, whether it's massive or whether it's small and you're just selling a few products, you still need to have privacy policy, or as you guys say in Liverpool, privacy, which I always enjoy our different accents on certain stuff. Gosh, a lot of those other aspects that come into play that you need to have. But again, I think overall, despite e-commerce being a very complex type of build and type of industry, it is awesome. And the demand is here, man. Like it is. And what do you see moving forward as we get towards wrapping this up? Like, what do you see the landscape looking like over the next maybe 5 years or so? Because I can only imagine it's going to get, more and more robust, but do you think you mentioned the experiential kind of aspects to that. Do you think that's going to be a big play? What do you see in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I think the beauty of these things, and it sounds crazy to say because e-commerce has been here since officially probably the late 90s, very, very sort of old school stores and things like that. Yeah. But really, we are right at the start of this thing. Even 20 years in, it's the start. You think about other industries, this is the start. So the opportunity is
That's a massive. Good point. That's a really good point.
Yeah. I don't think anybody should think I've missed the boat or that you think about how many new brands, new businesses are starting up all the time. There's so many potential clients out there. And we are right at the very start of this industry. Like we're at the beginning of, or the beginning phase rather of e-commerce still. So it's a great time to get in, learn the tools. We've been all around the houses today, and it's a huge, huge topic because it's literally buying a product online. Where does that start and end? It's an absolutely monster of a topic, but we've touched on a few good points, as you say. But the next 5 years, I think it's just going to keep going at a real quick pace. I think a key thing was different generations, older generations, for example, had no choice but to go online. During the pandemic, stores were closed. So it's forced everybody online, and not everybody's going to go back offline. So yeah, fingers crossed, this pandemic's going to fade away and we'll start seeing more of normal life and we can get out there more and things like that. But the rapid innovation that we're seeing now is really going to continue.
I think it's also going to cause some hesitancy for a lot of brands who do have brick and mortar stores. Like they may open up a small shop, but maybe it's not like 10 locations. Maybe it's just a couple locations and it's just less inventory. It's more a boutique and they're still going to keep a big bulk online. That's what I would foresee. That's what I would do if I was that kind of business owner, because you never know if something's going to, I guess, for lack of a better term, flare up again, like depending on what happens over the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely, yeah. And the beauty of e-commerce is, with products like WooCommerce, Shopify, and let's say Squarespace as well, why not? You can sell anywhere. It's borderless. It is literally borderless. So we got clients in the UK who sell in like tons of countries all across the globe. So it really does open up new markets that people just wouldn't have had access to. So COVID has sped this thing up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a few sort of trends that I think are going to really ignite is the AR, VR experience sort of model, because trying to replicate that in-store experience, but online, like even I think trying on clothes and stuff like that, that's going to really kick on. I think that's going to be a big thing.
I didn't think about this, but the chat widgets that are on pretty much every online store now, or at least a high percentage of them, those kind of act as like an in-store person to help you, right? I didn't really think about it like that, but they are like, hey, how can I help you? If you have any questions? I guess that's kind of the virtual way to do that.
That's absolutely it. And there's some now that are really advanced where they pull the products into the chat and you can, talk about specific products and things like that. So that's going to be one route. I think, a big thing to look at if people want to look at a side hustle or like something to really focus on is SMS, text marketing. Email's big. Email's never going away, and people underestimate email and then they realize how powerful it is.
I think it's back. I think the resurgence for email has come back really since COVID for sure. I think I've seen a lot of people boost up their email marketing and everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the next one to go along with that is text messages, SMS marketing. So cart abandonment, send an email, send a text as well. Yeah. And there's tools out there that do that with WooCommerce, with Shopify, with Magento, with Squarespace. So that's going to be a big one moving forward. And if you can set up those kind of flows, Klaviyo does it. So Klaviyo has got email marketing and SMS marketing. If you can set up that's really powerful. That is a great... That's a great add-on service that you could offer to clients in the e-commerce space, I think.
So and again, that just goes back to, there's all these options. What do you want to do? And then maybe if you don't want to do certain things, who can you partner up with and who's in your circle of web designers to help?
That is one thing that I put down. One of the biggest growth, if not the biggest growth of Velstar, the biggest factor, of growth has been partnerships, partnering the right people at the right time, the right platforms, the right products. So it's a great way, even on a smaller scale. Maybe someone just wants to be a freelancer. They don't want a lot of staff in the agency. Totally fine. that's a great opportunity. Partner with big agencies.
That's what I did. I didn't want to be the next Dan, CEO of Bellstar. I just wanted to be Josh with some really good clients and a small team of subcontractors. And that's what I did. So that's what's so cool is you can do both at different levels if you want to. And
absolutely.
As far as partnerships, you might be floating in a pool in Mexico, and then there you go. There's your next. Because dude, I was thinking back to this. You actually, funny enough, we almost started a podcast together. In fact, I created a logo for us. We were almost going to do a podcast called The Business Geeks before we ended up, we started it, but then I think we realized we were both not in the place to consistently do that. I know how much work goes into a podcast, and you got to be committed. But anyway, it was interesting because two of the main things that are passionate topics for me now are podcasting and recurring income. And you really helped me kind of think about those seriously when we were in that pool together in Mexico. You were talking about recurring income. You eventually were the one who partnered with me and got me started with our maintenance plan. So man, I personally thank you, Dan, for helping me be more entrepreneurial and thinking about all this stuff, man. Cause at that point, when I met you, I was just building websites. And then I did, we started partnering up on some stuff that you were really good at and vice versa. So I think it's a good point, in all honesty, just to keep an open mind about who you might end up partnering with. And you never know where it can go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're welcome. It feels like yesterday that we did that, but it's like 6 years now. Things have changed so rapidly. So a big part of our agency model is our retainers and working with people on an ongoing basis. There's a lot of value there. But it's true. You don't know where a connection could lead. I've always had that kind of mindset of help everybody that you can. If someone asks for advice, I'll give them advice. You just don't know where it's going to lead. And I've helped people, and they've turned out to introduce us to big brands and things like that. So
that's great. Network. Yeah. And I know you have a heart for helping, and it's one reason I'm super excited to bring you on. And it's interesting you say that, because I just invited a guest on who's an agency owner of a brand that I love as an example of an agency. But I'm not for sure if he's going to come on, but he said something that kind of rubbed me wrong. And that was that he was leery about coming onto a web designer podcast because he would create more competition. And I was like, are you really worried about my audience competing with this big web design agency? Because first off, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And second, there's so much demand now. Web designers, would you back me up in saying we don't need to worry about competing with each other at this point?
100%. I totally agree. I think, that's a bit of a negative mindset there, I'd say. I think you got to be comfortable enough in your own business and growing your own clients. And I would happily help people get started. Even in the Shopify world, I'd help people get started. There's so many brands, so much business. That's one good thing about the Shopify community, actually, that I have got to shout out, is that all the agency owners, we all go to events together, and everyone gets along and has a beer.
I was curious. I was wondering because I'm heavily involved in the Divi and WordPress community. I was wondering if Shopify had a nice community as well.
Yeah. And we have, the pandemic's got in the way, obviously, but pre-pandemic, Shopify have a yearly conference called Shopify Unite. And the last one was in Toronto. So everyone flew to Toronto, and it was great. They had a big party. Everyone trades war stories. There's competitive edge and things like that. And we come up against these guys for pitches all the time, but it's kind of friendly competition. There's no real nastiness to it. I think that's quite powerful in a community.
It really is. Yeah. Particularly when it comes to this, this idea of co-opetition, which is my favorite word of recent years, and just, cooperating with your competitors and being friends and helping each other out. I know one thing that the guys from Basecamp have said in their books is that their goal is not to out advertise or outdo. They just want to out educate all their competitors. And if you just share what has worked for you and share your knowledge, it makes you the authority. And again, going back to what we said earlier, if somebody right now is interested in doing online stores, you don't need to do every business that needs a website in an online store. That's not what you need. You just need maybe a dozen or a handful of online stores, and you're good for a while, and you can scale at whatever length you want. And again, if somebody wants to be the next Dan, CEO of Velstar, they can do that too and go on a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
So,
well, if you just think about the numbers on Shopify alone, there's 1.5 plus million stores, 1.5 plus million stores. And you said and there's and that's just one platform. How many's on WooCommerce? Probably more than Shopify.
That is interesting. I wasn't sure what the recent numbers. We'll have to look at WooCommerce stores. I don't know exactly how they track that, but because with Shopify being its own hosted platform, I'd imagine that would be a little easier to track exact numbers, whereas WooCommerce being on WordPress might be a little more fuzzy. But either way, I would imagine they're fairly comparable. I think WooCommerce may still have more stores.
I think it is. I looked at some trends the other day. I think more there's a few more WooCommerce carts than there is Shopify carts on the planet. But the point of that is there's literally millions of online stores. You need maybe 10 to 20 clients to make it a really nice business. There is enough work to go around. And similar to you inviting the guy on the podcast, back before I started the Shopify agency, I reached out to a guy who lived on another continent. I'll say, don't want to get too specific, but it wasn't North America and it wasn't Europe. And asked him some advice because he owned a Shopify agency, little mini agency. He just completely blanked me, didn't come back to me. 6 years later, his business doesn't exist anymore, and ours is going from strength to strength. So I think that sort of nature of being open and friendly, and there were basic questions as well. I wasn't trying to steal his secret sauce or anything, just after a bit of advice. We were on a forum together, basically. He just completely ignored what I was saying, and they don't exist.
Dude, I love your spirit with that, Dan. I think that's why we connected so quickly. And it is interesting. It's for the people who are nervous to share their knowledge, I've heard it said before in a variety of podcasts and stuff. And that is that if knowledge was the answer, everyone would be billionaires and have six packs. It doesn't it's implementation and partnerships and networking and connection. That's the real key to business. I believe. I mean, I have shared literally I don't know if there's anything I know in business that I have not shared in my podcast, my YouTube channel, or my courses. It's all there, but it's awesome. It feels great to be able to help others know that as well. And the fact that things are changing so fast, I think that has changed a lot too in business. Is things are evolving so fast that I don't know if, what you knew 10 years ago is as valuable as it is now, because you might learn something that is equally important next week that you might learn about,
Yeah, especially in web design and development, it moves so quickly. I mean, I was a front-end engineer, as I mentioned, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, because you were just doing CSS and coding, listening to podcasts all day, right?
Yeah. I promise you now, I wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't know. If you put a gun to my head and said, go and build a website now, it'd take me months to get back into scratch.
Because you're
so quickly.
You're focused on higher level stuff and all the strategy and everything else you're doing. I can only imagine. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I think that's pretty common when you're out of the flow of building websites. You go back and then you just see a blank screen and you're like, how can I not know what to do? So very common for everybody.
It's true. It is. It's a fast moving industry. Key is just nail the fundamentals, and all these fancy tools that come and go, you can pick those up.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time, man. Where would you like everyone to go to find out more about you? Do you want them to just go to the website, or is there a certain resource or anything you want them to check out?
Yeah, if you just check out velstar.co.uk if you want to see some of the work we do. But if anybody wants any advice or have got any questions, they could just drop me an email and I'll respond. It's just dan@velstar.co.uk.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll have that stuff linked in the show notes for this episode. I really appreciate all you've shared today, man. This has been really cool. It's been really awesome to catch up and to talk shop again with you, man. I honestly love seeing your passion for e-commerce, because I tend to see a lot of questions about e-commerce and it ends up being more of an overwhelming subject for a lot of web designers. But to see somebody who's killing it in the industry and is super excited, and you're not like, burned out from e-commerce and wanting to sell your agency, that's awesome. So this has been great, man.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me on. It's been great to catch up. It has been a little while. Although you keep up to date on Instagram and stuff, but it's not the same as having a proper catch up. But e-commerce is it's exciting. It's fast paced. You get to work with exciting brands. There's no sort of stuffy clients. It's all, we're selling something online and we need to make it look the best. So it kind of keeps the fire going for me, really.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And definitely next time you come into a conference, to the States, man, zip up to Columbus and we'll go out for a handful of more beers again.
Hey, I'm in Miami next week, actually.
Oh, so, no kidding. Well, that's probably only about a 2-hour flight, maybe something like that.
That's the crazy thing with the US. You got a flight in the UK for 2 hours. You'd fly past the end of it.
Well, we talked about that with driving, but I remember I told you that we were going to drive to vacation and you were like, oh, is it like a couple hours? I was like, oh no, it's like 13 or 15 hours. And you were like, what is the matter with you? Like, that's not uncommon, especially for the Midwesterner like us. Like, we drive 15 hours to the beach. It's no big deal. But yeah, you did up in freaking North Africa. If you did that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm looking forward to the next time we hang out in person for sure, Dan. Dude, thanks for your time. Really, really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And I'm excited to see what you do from here. And I'm definitely would love to have you back. Maybe we can talk about some the other outlier topics we covered today for e-commerce.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Josh. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Cheers, man.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.